crunch, bring it back, single leg sweep. Let me teach you how to wrestle. Okay, let me teach you how to wrestle.
We have another great treat for you today. My brother Jeff and I, we interviewed the University of Pennsylvania coaches, Reina and Matt Valenti. And we know Reina, longtime coach for the University of Pennsylvania, legend in his own right. And Matt Valenti will be taking over for him next year. So we're real excited to sit down with them. Coach Reina, he recruited both myself and my brother to the University of Pennsylvania. He's done great things over there, really helped change the game at the University of Pennsylvania as far as building champions on and off the mat. And Matt Valenti was our teammate. You know, I was just looking at the picture of us together that we took when we were there, and myself, Jeff, Matt, and I thought about when we wrestled against Penn State when we were at Penn. Valenti was a junior at 133. I was a junior at 157, and Jeff was a freshman at 165. So Jeff was right after me, but I thought about it that, you know, we were all in that lineup wrestling against Penn State. So that was back in the glory days of college. Awesome times, awesome memories, and a lot we've learned there. You know, when we went to the Penn Wrestling room, first thing we noticed, 2 Olympic champs in the room. Brandon Slay is in there. He's coaching people. Jordan Burroughs was there too with his kids. We were there. We saw Dave Patrick, who was the former CEO of Charles Schwab, one of the great donors of the University of Pennsylvania. The school weight room is named after him, Patrick. And, you know, and just other people. Kevin McWigan was over there helping out with the logistics. And again, several other wrestlers were training. So it was PRTC, University of Pennsylvania. They're just really doing great things. And one thing I noticed since we've been at Penn, every year the room just seems to be getting better and better. Better and better quality wrestlers are there, better and better quality facilities. It's just an unbelievable experience. We got to sit down with these guys and we got to pick their brain about the Ivy League education and the Ivy League wrestling and how that's different than anywhere else in the country. How wrestlers now have an opportunity with places like Penn to get an Ivy League degree as well as wrestle at the highest level against the best competition. So they talk about how the Ivy League is going to have their own division now. They're being outside of the IWA. They talk about their cornerstones for success, their philosophies, and just, like I said, great interview. Make sure you're taking notes because you're gonna learn a lot from these guys. And Matt Valenti, when we were over there, he won 2 NCAA championships. And I'm against good quality competition. He wrestled Chris Flieger in the NCAA finals, Coleman Scott. So he had to beat the best. Those guys were the best, and he had to beat those guys. So, you know, he knows what he's talking about. And we take a lot of those lessons from him back when he was competing. Back when we were at Penn, Jeff and Matt had Reina as their coach for a little while. And then he stopped for a little while, took a little bit of a break. When I was there, it was Zeke. So Matt and Jeff also had Zeke as our coach. But they were blessed to wrestle under Coach Reina also. Would have liked to have wrestled for him too. But make sure you stay tuned. It's going to be a great show. Let's get some lightning round questions in. Strength or speed?
Strength.
Strength.
Why?
In a sport like ours, where positioning matters, strength will overcome speed every time.
Position.
Possession?
Position wins.
Okay. Pin or tech? Assuming the team score is not on the line.
Tech pin.
Tech pin. Good answer.
If I have to pick one, I'm going tech. Ultimate dominance.
Ultimate dominance. What else did we have? What were other questions? We had, would you rather be the favorite or the underdog?
Got to know how to handle both, honestly.
You do, but if you had to pick.
Underdog's easier.
Matt?
Underdog, for sure.
You weren't the underdog very much, were you?
I was never the favorite. I didn't know anything else.
Okay, really athletic or really technical? Who wins?
At the collegiate level, too.
That's true.
Technical.
Conditioning.
Conditioning? Right, would you rather a wrestler who's really confident or really mentally tough?
Somewhat the same, right? I'd say mental toughness.
Mentally tough.
Why?
Confidence can break, mental toughness can.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
We got to find something you guys disagree on. Would you rather wrestle someone who's long and lanky or short and stocky?
Ooh, I'd rather wrestle short and stocky.
Long and lanky.
Why?
More leg to shoot on.
All right, excellent. Let's go into a few other questions. So yeah, the room looks much better. Every single time that I come into the Penn room, Matt and I were just talking about that. Something is better. The mats keep getting better. The lighting keeps getting better. Everything. There's all new things. So talk about that as time has gone on, how the program has grown and the great things that have been going on here. I know, big general question.
Yeah, I think for me, just to respond to that, it's kind of like this idea of forever moving forward, right? Forward progress, continue climbing, get the sense of being able to celebrate milestones along the way, and physical space, that's a representation of that, right? So when kids come back into the room in late August, September, they're coming back in for the start of a new season. There ought to be something new. To generate excitement and create that sense of momentum.
Absolutely. Matt, anything that you've seen? Obviously, we were back here together in 2005, 2006, 2007. Mm-hmm. So how things have grown since you've been here?
Yeah,
tremendous.
I mean, I'm a history major, so a lot of the things I think about, thinking about where we came from to where we are today, right? And if you go back and think about this room and this program and kind of just the physical space, like we've been in the same physical space since we started the sport of wrestling, right? That wrestling room is the original space. It was a fraction of what it is now, and over time it expanded a little bit. It went from what is the square mat in the middle of our room to a square plus a little bit of an offshoot, became an L space, and then it became the space that it is today. And now we're thinking about, what is that next step and what does the progress look like going forward? And I'd like to think our wrestling and the programmatic development matches that too, right? We are just progressing over time, thinking about where we next go in the future and making sure we're constantly adjusting, improving, getting better all the time.
Absolutely. And we come in, we drop by, random day coming by. I mean, we were planning, but all of a sudden, who's here? Patrick's here, and you're just talking about brainstorming ideas for this and that. We've got 2 Olympic champs in the room, Brandon Slade, Jordan Burroughs, which have been for some time now. Obviously yourselves, family. So we have past, present, and future champions, young kids who are in there. Kevin McWigan was there. Just awesome place to be. So talk about that. Is this what it's like on a daily basis at Penn? Is this what people get?
This is, it's, I think, community, right? It comes down to community, and the wrestling community here to me has been like a second family my whole life, and I think that's true for a lot of people. I don't think that's unique to me. So that's today. So I think it's a exciting time in our program. Look, we're coming up on hosting the NCAAs in Philadelphia in March. Another kind of celebration of our community. We hosted the EIWA championships a couple years ago. So I think this opportunity to bring our community together from far and wide for those big events, and then day to day, it's something I hope everybody appreciates and is grateful for. I think they are.
Oh yeah. And I'll talk about it because you were a student here, and then you're coaching here, and then a little time off, and then back. How's that grown? Talk about history. How's that been? What have you seen the evolution of the Penn program and the ecosystem as you call it, right?
Yeah. Well, the ecosystem, that incorporates, Penn and Drexel in our partnership for the PRTC.
Sure.
So this Olympic Regional Training Center we launched in August of 2014, and Brandon came out here after the Rio Olympic Games 2016. So we've got this history, from Foxcatcher back in the day. Obviously that ended tragically, and then moved into the Dave Schultz Wrestling Club, which we managed for 3 different Olympiads. And then today it's the PRTC. So having Olympic level guys, hopefuls in and around our program, is something that obviously it's part of all the best college programs around the country. And then the other part of the ecosystem is Beat the Streets Philly,
right?
Founded by Brett Motter and Clint Motter, Penn alums, and serving now over 1,000 kids in 30 different sites between schools and police athletic league and rec centers around Philadelphia, and just making a big impact on those kids. So we continually try and find ways to work together and through the sport of wrestling and the camaraderie to lift up each other's missions. So it's a big enterprise.
Oh yeah, and I heard Kevin said that the old mats, which weren't even so old, that Resolite helped out. The new mats, they feel great, and those old mats you guys donated to Beat the Streets Philadelphia. I thought that was just a great thing. Mm-hmm. Right? They must be thrilled. I mean, imagine the motivation of these kids. You got to Division I Ivy League wrestling school. Now you got these mats right here, so they had to be excited about that.
Yep. Yeah, we're glad to help out and serve, right? And I think more than half of our guys are volunteering time to beat the streets, either as mentors or coaches, and working with those kids, whether it's on the mat or whether it's schoolwork. Lifting the vision of what's possible in their lives. So making a big difference, making an impact.
Absolutely. Throwing the clock back a little bit, Matt being two-time New Jersey state champ, Fargo champ, and just one of the smartest wrestlers that we've ever seen, and that many people have said. Talk about your decision coming to Penn and how that all started, and now moving into the roles that you've been in through the years right up to now.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. So a big part of my decision-making process was, one, this guy, and he was one of the first calls I got, July 1 back then, when that recruiting process started. But candidly, I actually didn't have a ton of options. I was small in high school, or old high school weights. I wrestled 106, 112, 112, and then 119 as a senior. I'm not the tallest person that you're going to bump into on a daily basis. Excuse me, and I'm sure there were questions of how big would I be. I also wrestled at a public high school, small public high school. That was a great wrestling school, but didn't really wrestle outside the state of New Jersey. So my accolades, my credentials were really just inside the state of New Jersey. And honestly, I probably had legitimate interest from maybe 5 schools in total. 3 of them really probably saw potential in me and what I could do in college. And ultimately the decision came down to 2 schools, Penn and Cornell. Obviously I made the right decision, ended up here. Was fortunate to spend time with Coach Reina my first 3 years here at Penn. Coach left his temporary leave before he came back. Had 2 years with Coach Zeke Jones, with us, with you guys. Was fortunate to have 2 good years of success, and then from there I've had a bit of an interesting path to where I am today. Moved up to Columbia, coached at Columbia for 2 years, which was a great experience for me. Got to dip my toe into the coaching world for the first time. Had some decent success there at a program that was on the rise, and it was fun to help them kind of build. And that was a little bit of like building from the ground up, which was a really important piece of knowledge for me, thinking about like how do you build going forward. Came back to Penn. I decided in 2009 that I would hate myself if I didn't take a crack at the Olympics and try and at least put my hat in the ring for that. So I competed that Olympic cycle from 2008, 2009 to 2012. Had a blast, got to do an incredible amount of traveling. Very different than the model these days with these RTCs and kind of how things work out. I was coaching full time and I was training full time. I was commuting up to Lehigh because Lehigh was the only it was the only training center nearby. And had a great experience, going up there training, coming back here, trying to help program. But challenging thing to do, to try and do both. But talk about having to balance your time and figure out how to schedule things and balance your own needs versus the needs of a team. I definitely had to be on top of it to do that. Olympics ended 2012. I had started a master's up at Columbia. I gave it up to come train. Restarted a master's at Drexel. I did 3/4 of my degree at Columbia. I came back and did half of a degree at Drexel. Got my degree from Drexel, and while I was doing that, our now AD, but then deputy AD at the time, asked me to help do some work with the athletic department on a part-time basis. So I was doing a little bit of work with them from like 2012 to 2014. New athletic director came in 2014 and asked me to move over to administration full-time. I won't rehash my whole administrative career, but spent a ton of time in a whole bunch of different roles. I oversaw multiple departments, multiple areas, dozens of people over the course of my administrative career. And over the last few years, I was fortunate to have moved up pretty high in the athletic department, was on the athletic director's executive team, watching the landscape of the NCAA and where things are and trying to map out what things look like for the future. And it hit me one day as we're kind of talking about what the future looks like for Penn Wrestling. One of my roles was to work closely with Roger, oversaw the program, supervised Roger. As we were thinking towards the future and knowing Roger's time was likely coming to an end at some point, we needed to figure out a plan and looking around the country and trying to figure it out. And credit to these guys, they'd asked me a couple times and I definitively said no. And I think by the third time I said no and I found myself being like, why did I say no? And came home, talked to my wife, and we started kind of mulling it over. And it was probably a full year of kind of conversation, contemplation, thinking about where we go. And then I was in a meeting with the athletic director one day and talking about kind of where do we go and what do we do with the Penn Wrestling program and who's the next leader and how do we do it. And she jokingly turned to me and was like, well, you're the only person who could probably do it. And I was like taken aback, and I looked at her and I could tell she saw it at that moment and was like, oh, okay. And we didn't say anything. And a couple weeks later I came back to her and I said, so what would you think if I were to say yes to doing something like this? And then we really started digging into the conversations from there. Here we are today. For me, it came back to, you guys walked in the room and it was, my little ones were running around in the wrestling room, and we're running around with Jordan Burroughs' kids and a couple other kids, and having a blast. And I had just gotten off the mat with one of our guys, did an individual workout with one of our guys, and those direct connections, that like people to people time was what I missed. And I was excited to come back and really try and help people. And that's, you talked about good people in your last question, right? And the people around the program, and I'm a big believer, you can't find enough good people. And if you can collect good people, you're doing great things. So that's what we're trying to do, is try and collect as many good and great people as possible.
And what a great example, great shoes to fill here with Coach Reina, talk about collecting great people. What you did with the University of Pennsylvania from your time as far as, athletically, academically, the people you've built, and talk about how you've built this and getting people, not only recruits like Matt, but other people that at the selling point, what makes Penn distinct from other places. I know what I think, but I like to hear how do you frame it to these people? They want to get a great education, athletics.
Yeah, I think we've always talked about, the really high level combination between wrestling and academics, and Penn ranked, this past year, using U.S. News and World Report ranked 6th in the country. So it's this high level, balance, but I think that we've built, talk about moving things forever forward, right? We built other programs in addition now. We have the mentoring program where alumni, are systematically helping guys figure out, their careers, from initially designing resumes to internships to full-time opportunities or grad school, and that's a mature program we've been running for decades now. About 6 years ago, we launched the Penn Athletics Wharton Leadership Academy, so really a gold standard, world-class leadership development program where the athletes get to meet athletes from other teams and work together, to how to optimize their team environments. Fantastic program, really, really unique. So I think it's this combination of all these elements that we pour into, and yes, wrestling's at the center of it alongside high-level academics, but it's kind of like this holistic development. And the people that have been through it, they just kind of know and nod. They've been through something really special, and I think years after they graduate, they look back and they realize even more so kind of how special. And that's kind of the promise we put forward to people when they commit to coming here. It's as good as you feel about your commitment now. We promise you, our promise to them is that, and their families, is that 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road, your appreciation for this experience will only continue to grow. And that's a high-level promise that we make, but we make it to every single recruit.
Absolutely. Like I said, just building that all around. Like, yes, the wrestling might be at the center, but everything else is going around. I feel like a lot of coaches that might not, maybe the less experienced ones aren't looking at it like that. Maybe just more thinking in terms of the X's and O's rather than building everything around. Right? I mean, I always looked at you as like a great CEO of of an ecosystem, as long back as I could remember.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, it is a business, and it's the business of pouring into people and helping them unleash their potential, right? And so if we can not overextend ourselves, so that each of these elements that we're doing, we're all trying to execute at a really high level. So what you want to, I think, avoid as a head coach is the idea of the day and run down this path, and then next year it's another idea, next year it's another idea, and kind of scattershot, right? So I think it's important to prioritize and figure out what's most important, most impactful, and put your resources into those areas, put your time and effort into those areas, and build the culture around that being effective. So I think that's part of it.
Oh yeah.
You mentioned like the business part of it, being a CEO. You said we should probably bring up the transfer portal and NIL. And one of the things I noticed is that Penn doesn't seem to be touched too much at all by the transfer portal. Why do you think that is?
I mean, I think it's the long game. I think it's the long-term benefit of a degree from the University of Pennsylvania. I mean, it's a lifetime benefit. As I mentioned before, it continues to increase in value over time, right? And And so I think ultimately that's, that's the bottom line. I think you can go and look at, income for graduates and compare, Penn graduates versus others if you're just going to look at it, numerically, from a compensation standpoint. And, the results are staggeringly positive to stay at Penn and get your degree from Penn, not chase the short-term flashy thing. So I think that's part of it. And I also think it's, we try and recruit from a very values-based position. 5 core values. We very clearly about what they are, and we recruit through that lens. So it's character first, it's aiming big, it's humility, it's enjoyment, and it's community matters. So each and every recruit, very early in our process, are like, these are the things that are really important to us. It's the lens that we make decisions of who we're going to offer, spots to come in and join our program. And, similarly with the PRTC senior athletes, very values-based. So I think if you have that approach and you're very transparent in your recruiting process, you're going to end up with people who are coming for the right reasons. Yep. And then if we live up to our promise that, this value is only going to increase over time, I think we're all aware that the transfer portal and NIL is very real and it's not going away. So eyes are wide open, but at the same time, I think that values-based and long game puts Penn in a really strong position.
Oh, yeah. And I think Yoshi's being elected into the Hall of Fame. We're real excited for that. I'm sure there's going to be a great turnout. We're going to come out for that. It's just, people want to come back. We see the Keystone Classic. I'm sure the NCAAs, people want to come back to Penn, and then people want to bring the next generation over to Penn. I was thinking about the values you said. Do you have like an acrostic poem or not an acrostic poem, but like a mnemonic or an acronym to remember those? We can look it up on Scrabble. There's a Scrabble
quickly on the spot.
It's a Scrabble game. Is that really a word?
I'm big on those things, so we can remember, because that was great. And each one of those, I'm sure you could spend. Each one of those could be a lecture.
Yeah, and I think there's depth in each and every one of them, but I do think it's that each and every one of them are pretty commonsensical. That makes sense. But it's the 5 working together. We're aiming big, but we got humility with it.
Right.
We're going to have enjoyment, but we got character with it, and all the time we're caring about community around it. So it's this fabric of those 5 working together that I think really distinguishes the experience here at Penn.
Absolutely, it's a really special place. We'll be the first to tell you that. Matt, a lot of our wrestlers want to be NCAA champs. Mm-hmm. All right, you know a little something about that, times 2. So we talk a lot about mindset, of course, wrestling mindset. When did you believe you could? Obviously, I'm sure you came to college saying, "I want to be a national champ." Right, so that was part of your decision making where you wanted to go to school, which could have a big impact on your chances of becoming a national champ. You chose Penn. At what point did you feel like you believed I could really do this? And Jeff was saying before a story about when Coach said something about, "Do you believe yet?" or something like that.
I believe I've heard you guys tell the story at the NCAA championships when you were redshirting, right, Matt? Someone's got to tell the story of, because one of the most challenging things probably as a coach, as a mindset coach, is getting people to believe they could really accomplish big things.
Not lip service.
It's easy to say, I want to be a state champ. I want to be a national champ. And then you start to realize what it takes, to even think about being an NCAA champ, being a state champion. How do you get to that? So someone's got to tell that story.
So my sophomore year, I was number 3 seed at the NCAA championships. I got upset in the first round, wrestled back, ended up placing 5th at the NCAAs my sophomore year. In the wrestlebacks, I wrestled a guy from Indiana by the name of Joe Dubuque, who we had a pretty crazy match. He ended up injury defaulting out. I was winning at the time, but it was a pretty crazy match. So both placed in the NCAA tournament. Next year, I actually got injured my sophomore year. Took the next year off of school because I had surgery on my shoulder. I drove out to St. Louis to watch the NCAA championships that year, and unfortunately, we didn't have anybody in the finals that year. So I was sitting up in the stands with Coach Reina, and we're watching 125, and who's in the finals, winning a national title, but Joe Dubuque. And Coach turns to me, he's like, "What do you think?" And I watched Joe win. I'm like, "Yeah, I think I can do it." And he turns to me, he's like, "Then you're not going to do it." And I was like, "What? What are we talking about?" And he's like, "Unless you believe you're going to do it, you're not going to do it." And that was the first time it hit me, and it really clicked in that moment that thinking you can do it, saying you want to do it, none of that matters. If you don't believe in your core that you're going to do it, you're not going to do it. And it wasn't like my junior year, I came out gangbusters and was on fire all year and undefeated and in the Hodge running, and then I was a 6th seed at the NCAA championships that year, right? I was actually a lower seed my junior year, when I won my first title than I was my sophomore year when I finished 5th. But ultimately what it came down to was when that tournament rolled around, I knew in my heart, in my soul, like it didn't matter. I was going to do whatever it took. Like I believed to my core I was going to do whatever it took to do that. My favorite part of that tournament for me was actually first round. I had never won a first round match in the NCAA championships going into my junior year. So I'm the 6th seed, and I get inside tripped in the first period of the first match, straight to my back. Give up a takedown, and in my head, I distinctly remember being like, oh no. And like, didn't give up any back points, gave up a takedown. We actually go out of bounds, and I'm like walking back to the center. I look over at my coaches in the corner, and they're smiling, and they're laughing at me. And I was like, oh, right, okay. And I got out, like immediately took them down and pinned them, right? And I actually pinned my first 2 or 3 guys that I wrestled in the tournament. Probably one of the most dominant tournaments I ever wrestled in my life that year. And I just was like, I don't really remember much from that tournament at all. I just was like, all right, I'm going to win this match. I don't know how, but I'm just going to win this match. And then it was like, oh, next match. All right, well, I'm going to win this one too. Don't really know how I'm going to win it, but I'm going to win it. And it all kind of just steamrolled. But I mean, I think anybody who's around me during that tournament will tell you, like, the air of determination and like the quiet confidence behind it. Like, I don't think anybody stepped on that mat and was like, all right, I'm going to roll over this guy today. Like, you didn't sense any fear or trepidation of any kind. Like, I was just like, all right, next guy up, let's go. Knocked off the 3 seed, the 2 seed, and then the 5 seed to win the tournament. So, you know, that was really the moment, I think, where things flipped for me, where I was like, yeah, I think I can. And he was like, well, then it's not happening, sorry. And that was like that mental flip for me of like, I believed it. But it wasn't just saying I believed it. It was like I had to learn how to believe that to my core. And I had earned the right to believe that to my core too.
Right, and I know it definitely was, because that was the year I came here. Those were the 2 years that I came when I transferred in. Jeff was already here a year before me. And one of my first memories of Penn, when we were walking down Locust Walk, the 3 of us were together. I don't know if you guys even remember, but Jeff said, All-American Matt Valenti. So you were an All-American at the time. He said, no, national champ Matt Valenti. And this is before that happened, and it wasn't a cocky thing. It was none of this. It was just, I'm going to win this thing. And when the guys, when you won, I remember a lot of the guys for us that were home out at Smokes, everyone was celebrating. It was awesome. I mean, being there and watching you, it was like, man, I don't think anyone's beating them. And getting it done and the way you got it done was just incredible. Coach, talk about that from your perspective. About I'm sure you knew that Matt was capable, had the tools to win a national championship all along. How do you talk to a guy who's capable of doing it and getting him to believe? What have you done with that?
Well, I mean, I think it's the challenge of taking it from I think I can do something to believing in your heart you can do something, right?
Yeah.
And feeling it, and as Matt said, earning the right to feel that, right? So not something that I thought once and it was a passing thought and I had it for a moment and I lost it, but really living it every day, and so I think then that instills the that deep-seated belief. So if you get inside tripped, maybe you do go to your back, and whatever happens, that you still have that deep-seated belief. It's planted in such a way that it doesn't, a little bit of windstorm doesn't unseat it, right? So I think it was a challenge, and Matt accepted that challenge, in a championship type way. So I think that's a challenge for us as coaches, whether it's winning the NCAA championship or whether it's someone wins their first college match.
Right.
Or the first time they, beat somebody who's ranked, or whatever that first aha moment is in anything at the high school level. Maybe it's the, first win at the state tournament, or, first podium finish, or first, title performance at the state tournament. We're all trying to get to those breakthrough moments and really accomplish something that, we haven't accomplished before, right? And that's those aha moments, those joys in life that, I look back on my career, and those are the things I celebrate, really across the board, whether, whatever level they accomplish it at. If we don't do something new and find a new depth within ourselves, that's to be celebrated, right? So.
Yeah, let's lean into what you guys said about with the inside trip in terms of resetting yourself, because we see people who are confident. Maybe they got taken down. They have the confidence to bounce back from it, but sometimes when it's a little bit more traumatic, where you're put to your back and they're like, oh crap, I'm way behind. A little bit different than confidence, right? I mean, they're related, of course, but how do you reset yourself after something bad happens where it's like worse than just like a little takedown?
You want to talk about that moment?
Yeah. I mean,
You said you looked over at coaches and the coaches laughed. Now,
Yeah.
people could take that different ways. You responded well to it. What happened there and how should people think?
yeah, I mean, for me, so much of it comes back to having confidence what I did to get to that point in the first place, right? And that's the work that went in behind it. So what I had to do was just take a deep breath. My coaches are smiling and laughing because they're like, we've been in this situation 100 times in practice, right? We've put you through the live go where you're down by 5 and you got to figure out how to win a match. And in practice, I figured out how to win that match, right? And I may not do it every time, but I know I've done it before, right? There's a way to do it that, you know, you are in that position, you've wrestled through that position, you've wrestled through that scenario before. It's not the first time you've ever experienced it. And in those moments, you have to be able to just pause for a second and say, oh, I've done this before. I've been here before. I can do this. And it's just, you have to take that half a second, and just say, okay, refocus. This isn't new to me, right? I know I can do this, or I know I can pin somebody if I have to. There's a way for me to figure out how to do this. But it can't be the first time you've ever been in that situation, right? It was far from the first time I've ever been taken down first in a match. I mean, that junior year, I got taken down first in probably 15 matches.
The time is now to take your mindset to the next level with Wrestling Mindset. Make sure you go to our website, wrestlingmindset.com, and sign up for your free trial session today. Don't wait any longer. You want the mental edge right now. When you sign up for the free trial session, you're also going to get a copy of our free ebook, Building the Predator Mindset. This book has helped thousands of people build confidence, relax under pressure, get motivated, and build mental toughness in wrestling, school, and life. Make sure you sign up for your free trial session today.
Right? And out of those
Not
15,
that many.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I was a slow starter.
I remember there was a few, but not. But yeah, I got you.
But like that wasn't that uncommon. It wasn't like something like it has never happened. Oh my gosh, I've never been taken down before. Like, oh, time out. Like little step back, take a deep breath, get some perspective, and say, oh, time out. Like, I'm okay. I'm okay. Even if I gave up back points, like I pinned that guy, right? Like, I know I can turn people. I know I can find a way to get multiple takedowns. I know I can find a way to do different things. So like, it's a little bit of like just taking pause and having confidence in the work that you put in to get to that point in the first place, and being able to just say, all right, like now we reset, now we refocus. It's a new match, and we focus on what we need to focus on and go from there.
So yeah, I think that, just talking about the transition too, that we've had a very thoughtful, very transparent transition, and typically when head coaching changes happen, they're often very abrupt, kind of a surprise, disruptive. So we've been really thoughtful with our athletic director here, Dr. Shanahan, and everybody involved with the program. Like, how can we do better than that? How can we do better than that for the guys on the team, for our alumni, for our constituents, families, fans? So announcing very clearly, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to be the head coach next year. My final year as head coach. Matt takes over April 1, 2025 as head coach. I'll still be on staff, full time, and my contract ends in July of 2026. So very transparent, communicated, clear plan for transition. I think this is the best way we can do this, and I think everybody's very excited about it.
Yeah, and I think just having someone who's been here for a while, who's wrestled here, knows the ropes. I think that's especially important at a place like Penn. This is not an ordinary university, right? So, I mean, talk about that a little bit, how the advantage I feel like that gives you, that you have that continuity on both of you.
So I think a huge part of that transition that will help us in this is, yes, I mean, being a Penn alum and being around the program and understanding where this program is, sure, that helps. But Coach talked about the core values that go into our program that are Penn Athletics core values as well. I mean, it is a very distinct set of core values that has a lot of impact on our program. I was a part of those values coming into place, I guess it was about 8 years ago now, when the athletic department went through that process of finding, what would those core values be? What did we feel like were the right things? I was a part of that process. So I very much believe in those core values. I embrace those core values, and I think they have to be part of who we are and what we do on a daily basis. And that as the foundation makes this transition even easier, because it's not like I'm somebody coming in from the outside who's like, those were cool core values. Well, here's a new set of core values, and I know you came in with these is what you're thinking about, but really we're going to go in this direction, right? For me, it's about consistency of embracing what we've already embraced and figuring out like what does the next step look like? How do we build on where we are? We talked about progress and taking steps forward and forever moving forward, and that is what I'm thinking about. Is like I know where we are. I understand what Coach has built, and I want to maintain that. Right there's an incredible foundation around Penn Wrestling that Coach has built through the years, and I'm not knocking anything down. It's just a question of how do we build on top and what do we do to continue to elevate. The trajectory is there, has been there, and it's just a matter of maintaining that for me. I essentially come in and I just am trying not to screw it up, right? And that's the ultimate of what you would want to do if you're coming into a head coaching position.
Humility.
Again, yes. But absolutely, but it's all these, you have the alumni, the donors, the team, and everyone working together. I think that them seeing that continuity, because coming to Penn, it's about building champions, not just on the mat. Of course, people who are looking to be champions on the mat, but also in their careers and in life. And that's why people are sending their kids to Penn. It's not just, hey, just athletic success. Yes, that too, but there's an even bigger purpose. So I think if you shake that up too much, people from the outside, it could mess up a very good thing, like you said, you have going.
I think one of the reassurances that we've given to the guys on the team and to our alumni and families and everybody involved is like, look, our values, as Matt said, our values are our values. They're enduring.
Right.
Our vision and our goals and our aspirations, remain the same. And I have every confidence that Matt's going to elevate those and escalate those, and that's what's really exciting. Again, more of those aha moments for all of our student athletes and their families. Right. So that's really what it's all about. And I think we've got really good momentum and we've got really good trajectory. And you look at Max Gallagher, who just won the U23s, so that's 2 years in a row. A Penn guy has won the U23 National Freestyle Championships and gone on to represent the United States, Team USA, in the Worlds. So Max will wrestle in Albania in October. And it was super cool too because Doug Zaff was the representative last year.
Yep.
Doug now coming on staff as a coach, was cornering Max Gallagher when he went on to win the U23s the next year.
Cool.
So super cool. And we've had just really good, performances at the national level in freestyle and Greco-Roman, and we've tracked that over the last 5 years. We've had 41 All-Americans in freestyle or Greco at the U20s, U23s, or the Open level. Doug was actually a bronze medalist at the Open as an undergraduate at Penn. So we really think that's a strong indicator, leading indicator of NCAA success. Guys that have had multiple, bites at the apple, so to speak, at the national level, have felt what it's like to be on the podium there. And again, super excited to be hosting the NCAA championships here in March here in Philadelphia. And I think our guys are ready to go. I think our program is ready to pop to the next level.
That's it, and I think that's just on the athletic side of it. Then you think academically, the Wharton School of Business, right? #1 business school. I mean, when I was here, the psychology program, top 3 in the country. I mean, the first American Psychology Association meeting was right over here, and all the other programs, obviously at Penn. It's just huge, and a big part in thinking even psychology about preparing the team. About how do you guys prepare the team mentally? I know when we were here, we had Joel Fish come and he was working with the team, and I saw his name still on there now, and I see around the room different pieces of mindset advice and emotional regulation. I just think that's great. I remember when Joel Fish was with us and he was saying, hey, what percentage of wrestling's mental? And we were like, 90% mental, whatever it is, but how much are we putting that time? And I know that's something you guys have always done. So I talk about that a little bit, how you guys get the guys ready mentally on top of what you already do talking to them.
Yep. Well, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. When we talk to athletes about, what percentage of success is the mental part of it, most come out with a really high percentage. You mentioned 90%. It's a pretty common response. But how much time are we actually spending on those mental skills? Whether the reset skills, if we leave up a takedown or we go to our back, or have to fight our way back through a tournament on the backside, right, and face disappointment. How do we teach resiliency, right? And some of it's the physical aspect, obviously. Some of it's a technical aspect, obviously. But that mental performance component, I think that cuts across all those areas, right? And at the end of the day, once you're at the tournament or once you're in the dual meet, it even rears its head more importantly, right? So we do our best, try and invest, as a team, try and provide, resources to athletes on an individual level too. Try and be responsive as coaches, knowing that everybody's different. can't treat this, different athletes in the same manner, right? We have to really, understand where they're at and meet them where they're at. And so, at this point in my career, when I look at, like what's the most important attribute of a great coach as compared to a good coach, what's the most important attribute of a great coach? What I come to is empathy, meaning, to really understand, where someone is in their life and being able to meet them there, and everybody's going to be different. So, if you approach it that way, it takes a lot of breadth of knowledge, a lot of breadth of an individual's resources as a coach to be able to do that. But I think that's ultimately the best way to get unleash people's potential. Right?
Yeah, and I think also you have to have a system, but it also has to be individualizable. That's the word, right? Because you can't just shoot from the hip. Like there is a human nature that we all share. So humans are similar, and when you're speaking to most people most of the time, you could say something. But just like no two fingers on your hand are the same, no two people are the same. So it can't be too systematic, and it can't be too individual. But that just right Goldilocks theory, right? The porridge not too hot or cold, just right.
I think that's right. And then I think there's also, a time where, I've heard coaches say very wisely, don't overwater the plant, right? Sometimes just not thinking and sometimes just letting things go, can be the best thing for an athlete. So as a coach, knowing as best as you can, how to, again, meet that athlete where they are and meet their needs. And sometimes it's just kind of letting things be and being quiet. Right. So time and place for everything, and I think that's the coaches that are most successful kind of get a sense for what's the right time, what's the right place, what's the right watering level, right?
Right. And I think about just the roots of wrestling mindset, how much that we started and the influence Penn has had on us. Jeff and I both went to Penn, the founders. Jake Hunter's our COO. Penn, Josh Baylor, one of our top mindset coaches, and then throughout the years, Raleigh, Trey McLean, Ben Ryder, probably many other people.
Jeremy Schwartz,
Kanan Bethea.
Kanan, oh goodness, Kanan. Oh,
and Aaron.
Kanan was just out. Aaron.
Yeah.
Man, so we're talking about some of our best people ever from Penn. So it's those values that you're putting into people. We're trying to give that to people.
I think it's incredibly important, and I think there's a big need in the wrestling community. My kids ended up playing all different kinds of sports growing up, and I see it in other sport communities too. And I think it's kind of a lot of times it's the white elephant in the room, not talking about mindset, right? So I think that leaning into it, moving forward, trying to fill that void, fill that need. I think what you guys have built is an incredible business that serves a very real need for kids. As they're trying to learn how to chase their dreams and grow their dreams, right? How do they manage the the mindset process along the way? I think it's a very, very valuable experience. We have mindset coaches come into each and every camp that we host. So over lunchtime, we take a break from the technical work, the physical work, and relax and have lunch, and have Jake or Josh come in and speak to the campers, and it's always well received, right? And so the brand is out there, and I think serving a big need in the community.
Awesome, thank you, Coach, and no doubt in large part from what we've gotten from the University of Pennsylvania. While Matt's still out, what are some of his greatest strengths and the biggest things he's going to bring to the program?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of them, and I think that just his wrestling IQ and eye for detail and technique is phenomenal. I think he has a tremendous ability to evaluate opponents and scout. Again, not overdo it, but not underdo it, and go in prepared. I didn't really intend to come back into coaching. As we launched the PRTC, we were getting a couple of our initial athletes, Richard Perry and Danny Mitchell, ready for the Olympic trials in 2016. And Matt and I spent a lot of time working with Richard, and he was really kind of a rising star. I don't think there was anybody on the USA wrestling scene that was rising at a faster rate than Richard Perry. We had a phenomenal match with Kyle Dake at those trials. Had the lead up until under a minute left in the match. But us really working with Richard, who took 5th in those trials and went down as Kyle Snyder's workout partner for the Rio Olympic Games, where Kyle won. Us working together was just very natural, right? And so working together here these past couple months with him coming on board has again had that same kind of feel, just like supernatural. Oftentimes, we're probably finishing each other's sentences, and so that's terrific. So I'm really excited for the next couple of years. I'm super energized, to work together, this next year with me as head coach, but in the following year to be support, support to Matt, and we have a lot of, pretty big major fundraising projects in mind. I think a lot of initiatives to reach out into the grassroots area, because this hotbed that we have around us is, as most people know, it's as good or better than any wrestling hotbed in the country. So from, youth wrestling, from middle school to high school, to collegiate, to RTCs. So this ecosystem we talk about a lot here in the Philadelphia area, the excitement for the sport of wrestling here in the area, I think is at an all-time high, right? So how do we best maximize that? How do we leverage each other's strengths to lift up each other's organizations? I don't think it's something that can be replicated anywhere else in the country. So we're in the middle of that right now, having fun, trying to figure that out together. In addition to Beat the Streets Philadelphia here, you mentioned Ben Ryder,
Right.
Who's running Beat the Streets National.
Right.
So now you've got the national organization, the umbrella organization, overseeing all the Beat the Streets chapters, also located out of Philadelphia here. So, we all just love the sport of wrestling. And however we can grow it, enhance it, it's been a lifetime passion of mine.
Oh yeah, man! I think about how Jordan Burroughs coming and how that injected even more energy. Talk about the impact that he's had on the program.
I'll mention a little bit, and then I'll kick it over to Matt for his perspective. But it's been a lot of conversations over the years, with Jordan and his wife Lauren about potentially, coming back here. Jordan is from Sicklerville, New Jersey, just 20-25 minutes here from Philadelphia. So to come back home, it's really kind of, I think the athlete coming back home for the culmination of their career is just a great story. And Jordan with his five children, and Lauren, in this area, starting All I See Is Gold Academy, with the big vision of what that can do and impact in the community. But you think about it, like Jordan could have gone anywhere, for the culmination of his career. So just big respect and the responsibility, that he entrusted, the people here, Coach Slay, and all of us, for the culmination of his career. And so, since being back, the PRTC, he's won 2 world titles. He's been knocking on the door, making other world teams, Olympic teams, and then, we've got the competition coming up, the World Team Trials, non-Olympic weights in September. He's just an amazing person, athlete, yes, but his demeanor, mentorship, impact on all of us and the guys on the team, the PRTC senior athletes as well as the college athletes is just phenomenal. So I can't say enough.
Yeah, so
add on to that.
I would just say, like most of the wrestling world, I've always known of Jordan Burroughs, and I've followed Jordan Burroughs and know what Jordan Burroughs has done, but I can't honestly say that I've known Jordan Burroughs, right? And over the last 8 weeks or so, since I've kind of been in the wrestling room more consistently, I've had the opportunity to just watch and spend a little time with him, but really just kind of watch Jordan. And the thing that people don't realize is there's so much more to Jordan Burroughs than what he's done and what he's accomplished. He's technically savvy beyond belief. He knows what he's doing, but he's incredibly humble. More importantly, right? He's willing to get on the mat with our guys, any of our guys at any given time. A couple weeks ago, there was a practice leading into U23s where I was actually going to go. I was walking across the room to go grab Max Gallagher to talk about one thing I wanted him to work on technically that I caught during practice, and I just wanted to say, hey, I want you to think about this. And Jordan had walked across the room about the same time, and he beat me to Max. And before I made it across the room, Jordan was already doing with Max what I was about to do with Max, right? And I afterwards was just like, hey, thanks so much. He's like, I saw it immediately. We started talking, and I was like, this is awesome, right? This is awesome. And I think it's easy to put Jordan Burroughs on this poster as Jordan, the All I See Is Gold champion, arguably one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. But people forget who Jordan is, right? And what Jordan's about, and he gives so much back to our community here, so much back to our Penn Wrestling team. and so much to the surrounding community. I mean, Jordan's the guy that'll show up, beat the streets unannounced, right? He'll show up at a practice, and he doesn't want the fanfare, he doesn't want the attention. He'll just show up because he wants to do it. You talk about what makes people special, what makes them successful. Like, those are the things that truly make people successful. And you know, whatever Jordan's career is done, you know he's going to be successful because he has that as his core and as his foundation, right? And it's part of why Jordan has fit in with our core values that we talk about here too. You know, I am incredibly appreciative of what he's brought to Penn, into the PRTC, into our ecosystem here. But he is going to leave a lot with us, no matter what it is it ends up being at the end of the day. And we're so incredibly fortunate to have him in our room. And you know, he was one of the people in the room earlier today who had his kids running around, right? And his kids were in there playing with my kids, and you know, it's just a cool experience to have somebody like that in our room, providing life lessons, wrestling lessons to our team and to everybody around us.
I'll add one thing onto that. You know, Matt mentioned humility, and we talked about that as being one of the core values. And Coach Slay says this about Jordan often, that not once, when as Brandon's coaching, you know, Jordan all these years, you know, previous role as USA Wrestling coach that Coach Slay was at, and then here at the PRTC, not once has Jordan said, "Well, I do things this way," or "I do things my way." Right? This is how I do it. He's always been humble to the extent of being willing to take in coaching, being a great student of the sport. You know, so for all the young listeners out there, or the parents or coaches, you know, how about the greatest wrestler of the modern era in the United States, maybe of all time, never saying, "Well, I do it this way," and being open to, receptive to coaching. I think there's a really important lesson in there for everybody, all of us.
That's huge. None of this. Humble, coachable, and that's what ultimately makes champs. So when you think you have all the answers, you got to start changing the questions, right?
We should talk about the impact of bringing back Brandon Slay. You know, former Penn wrestler coming back,
Olympic champ,
Olympic gold medalist.
Mm-hmm.
Now the head of the RTC. What has his impact been like? Just having him around the program.
Yeah, I think it's been phenomenal. You know, like so, Brandon came all the way from Amarillo, Texas, to come to Penn in the first place, and you know, was one of the trailblazers. You know, breaking through at the national level, two-time NCAA finalist. Faced two really high-level opponents in each of those finals. Mark Branch, a four-time finalist in his first trip to the finals as a junior. He lost 3-2 in that match, and then a familiar opponent in Joe Williams in the finals, Brandon's senior year. And then he flipped it and beat Joe Williams to make the to win the U.S. Open and get the top spot, you know, at the Olympic trials, and then faced one of our assistant coaches, Brian Dolph, friend and former training partner in the finals of those Olympic trials. So Brandon going on to Sydney and doing what he did down there, years at USA Wrestling. He was on the board of the PRTC initially, and as we were working on getting that organization off the ground, there was a moment when one of us said, who would be the best coach if we could just pick anybody, and there was kind of a silence on the call, and you almost could see people in your mind's eye, like starting to look at Brandon, and we started thinking about it. And so he moved his family here, and 4 kids now, and his wife Tina, after the Rio Games in 2016. And initially he was out there doing a lot of clinics and explaining what the PRTC is. I think the brand that has been built with the PRTC now is really well known, but when he first got here it wasn't. Talk about building earlier, right? And brand building is a really hard thing to do, right? It takes time, it takes consistency, it takes delivering on the brand promise, and I think that that's been done by the PRTC board, with Brandon's leadership and the athletes, living out the values. So I think it's been a great impact. I think it'll continue to be a brand that's well known for with RTCs across the country for a long time to come.
Oh yeah, and again, like I said, when you see it, it's like you past, present, and future in the room when we just come in on a given day, which is great. I mean, if we knew what your kids and Jordan's kids were going to be around, hey, maybe we would have gave it a second thought of maybe we give our kids the day off and come on out with us
next time. Right?
Yeah, next time if they're good. Why is wrestling the best sport in the world? smart. Give yourself some time to think.
Go ahead, Matt. Going right on the spot.
Go ahead, Matt.
I mean, I think in simplest terms, it's the lessons that you take from the sport. You know, everybody jumps to like discipline and, you know, all those pieces. But, you know, one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot recently is the amount of suffering you do in the sport of wrestling. It's one of the reasons I'm not pushing my kid into it right now is this sport is unforgiving and it's really hard and it hurts and there's a lot of pain and there's a lot of suffering and there's a lot of sacrifice.
Now imagine the guys who didn't win it.
Yeah. But like,
Right.
it's inevitable that if you stick in this sport, you're going to take your lumps at some point, in one way or another. Whether it's in practice, and maybe you become a 4-time national champion, you never lose a match in your career. Like, sure, that may happen at some point again in the future, but that's not common. Even Kale had a loss in
They're
his career
suffering.
in college, right? And in practice, I'm sure he didn't beat everybody he wrestled in practice every single day. Maybe Kale did, I don't know. But you know, you inevitably are going to suffer, and even if you don't, you know, lose a match, you know, you are still sacrificing, you're still getting beat up, you're still pushing your limits in a way you don't in many other sports. I played soccer all the way through high school. I loved soccer. I had a blast doing it. I did it because it was a fun way to run, because I hated running, right? And it was like a really fun way to get a lot of road work in without having to think about the road work you have going. But like, then you get to college and like, you got to run. So you just got to suck it up and you got to go do it. And I think that is something that sticks with you throughout your life. Of like, there are going to be a lot of hard things you run into in your life, and the number of times that I feel like I've bumped into something that's incredibly difficult, and I've been like, oh man, this sucks right now. Well, this doesn't suck nearly as much as, you know, getting my teeth knocked out, or like, you know, the puke that I had to, you know, get out of my system because I ran so many sprints so hard. Like, there's just a different level of suffering and sacrifice, and like it just gives you a life perspective, I think, of like, okay, hard things are going to happen in your life, and you don't catastrophize. Things like don't get off the rails just because something goes wrong. Your plan that you had ahead of you didn't work out. Like in wrestling, very rarely is the plan that you have in front of you, right, for a practice going to work out. Right? All right, I'm going to practice. I'm not giving up a takedown. I'm not giving up a single point. And in the first 10 seconds alive, I'm on my back, fighting off my back because I did something stupid, and my teammate put me on my back, and he's not going to let me off my back. And I'm like, all right, well, this didn't go like I planned, right? And those types of things, I think, are like beyond what people talk about of the normal wrestling benefits of what they bring to the table and what makes it so great. It's like, you know, when you're in it, you don't appreciate it. After the fact, when you reflect back on it, right, when you can finally gain that perspective of like, I did all these things that really sucked, and it really wasn't that much fun to do a lot of these things, but I came out better for it, and I can look back on my life now and say, there probably isn't anything I'm going to do that sucked as much as some of the things that I did when I was going through the sport of wrestling. And I just think there's a life perspective that comes from that people don't necessarily appreciate until you're out of it a little bit more.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up because you talked about suffering. We did some of that together right here at Franklin Field. Some brutal workouts out there, whether it was extremely hot, extremely cold, or extremely wet. We did it. We were all out there on the field, and it was hard. And you think about it, it's like, man, why are we doing this? And I mean, and it'd be like, we're only in the first week of preseason, and it being hellish. But yeah, it makes you a better person, absolutely. Coach?
Yes, I agree with what Matt said. You know, the ability to dig deep. You know, and I constantly think about this, like, is wrestling a character builder or is it a character revealer, right? And I think it's probably both. And I think having gone through that, you know, the level of respect that the people who have gone through that share with each other, you know, that's to me the community, the wrestling community. And that's, you know, when I ended up coming back to take the program back over at Penn, that was the single most welcome thing, to be back in the wrestling community, to be back amongst people who were like-minded, who share this experience. And oftentimes you don't even have to talk about it. Just you meet another wrestler, you know they've been through it, and there's an automatic respect, right, amongst those people. And so I think that's another benefit that comes out of it that's really a lifelong benefit, you know, is to be part of this, you know, this shared experience, this community.
Absolutely.
Do we have time for 2 questions? We have a Penn Wrestling text group. So you ready for the tough ones?
Oh, go for it.
I might have to reword them a little bit. I wasn't going to mention names.
Okay.
All right, I guess more for Matt. What do you believe are the expectations for the program in the next 5 years? And tactically, how are you going to get there?
Getting into the nitty-gritty. Okay.
This is the third hardest question, by the way, that we have for you.
I'm only going to go one more after this.
At least you warmed me
It's
up.
a loaded question.
Appreciate it. Listen, the goals that we have for this program really are not changing, right? We have really high aspirations. We want to be a top 10 team. We have to change some of our goals a little bit because we're not in the ELWA anymore. We're in an Ivy tournament, but we want Ivy champions. We want Ivy tournament champions. We've had 25 guys at the NCAA tournament. Is that right?
Yeah,
25
25
guys
over
at
the
the
last
NCAA
3
tournament,
years.
the last 3 years, right? We want more. We want to push to have more guys at the NCAA tournament. But more importantly, we want guys on the podium. We want guys on the top of the podium, right? Our friends to the north finished second at the NCAA championships last year. 2 years ago, we split 5-5 with them. Last year, we lost 8-2, but lost 4 or 5 one-point matches. Right? We're knocking on the door, and the question just is how do we and when do we kick it open? And you talk about goals. The goal is to kick that door open. We do that, the results will follow. And we just have to figure out how we kick that door open. Specifics behind that, I'm not giving that away in an interview. Sorry, guys.
All right, here's the other one. I guess I'll follow up on this. What resources, if any, does the program need to take that next step?
Take that. So I think that like any program, any wrestling program is wise to be building endowment dollars. We have a relatively healthy endowment, I think, with Penn Wrestling now, but our goal is to create this lasting legacy of excellence. And you look at programs around the country that have maintained excellence over coaching changes, over athletic director changes, over different kinds of rules changes. Now we have NIL and transfer portal, right? Lots of change. But the programs that have the deep keels, I think they're the ones that really can invest in their endowment. So that's a big part of the Lasting Legacy campaign, which we're going to be launching here in the fall. We're looking at facility space. I think that's something that a lot of programs have invested in, and we want to be current and we want to be cognizant. But I think Matt and I both agree that there's nothing more important than investing in the people, right? Nothing more important than investing in your coaching staff. Nothing more important than the senior level, RTC athletes. It's really all about the people. There's not a lot of equipment in the sport of wrestling, right? It comes down to the people. So I think that's the most important.
We should probably end with just impact of Penn Wrestling, right? So obviously we want people to leave here as NCAA champions, but what's the impact you want beyond that, 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road?
Yeah, I think it's the promise that we give every one of our recruits and their families, when they commit to us, is that their appreciation for the value of their decision to commit to coming to Penn and being a Penn wrestler only increases in value over time. Their appreciation for the experience continues to increase over time. 5 years out, 20 years out, it's even more important, more visceral. That's our goal. That's a high level promise, right? That's a promise over the long game, and I think that's most important. Hopefully they love the sport in a way that they go out into the world and serve it in some way, whether it's coaching youth sports or giving back or being an official or in whatever way starting a business. I've always been really proud of the fact that there's Penn Wrestling alums that have launched businesses within the sport, right? So Wrestlite, founded by Warren Tischler, Wrestlite Mat Company. Blue Chip Athletic out of Kansas City, Gonzalo Medina, and you guys with Wrestling Mindset. And hopefully there's other people that are building businesses that are coming back in to serve the sport community. So that's a little bit, kind of what my vision, again, kind of forever moving forward, serving the sport.
Awesome. Anything else that we missed or anything else you wanted to say or cover? You guys good?
Appreciate what you guys do.
Yeah, thank you. And on my end, first, Matt, just being your teammate and us going, with Jeff and going through everything we went through, the hellish workouts out here in the field, being in classes together, seeing the good, the bad, the ugly, right? And not just seeing you win the national championships, but watching you suffer, going through the daily grind, win matches, lose matches, close matches, winning big. As far as us, when we're constantly trying to give the mindset to wrestlers and having you as an example that we've been able to watch, it's just been unbelievable. And we still always talk about that to athletes, the things we've seen you do and how you got it together mentally. And we think, time flies, moments die, seize the day. So it's thank you for being a great example and a great teammate always. And I'm really happy. We're really happy that you're the one who's going to be taking over this program. Glad it's you, right? So thank you for all that you do. And Coach, just super with so much respect for you, everything you've done with Penn Wrestling. And for myself, on behalf of myself, my brother, my dad, my parents, our whole family, we just can't thank you enough for giving us the opportunity to go to this school, Penn. That you've opened this door for us and for our family, and to be part of the Penn Wrestling family, the ecosystem. So thank you guys very much. We're honored to be here.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.